to come and to perform a water dance, really happy water dance, and really it lifted our spirits.
Tonight, a dance group from India takes part in the celebration of water to help Mi'kmaq grandmothers in Nova Scotia. And wildfires continue to burn in Saskatchewan because of dry conditions, and one community has declared a state of emergency. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. A Mohawk man has beat charges he was facing from the Canadian Border Services Agency using a never-used-before defense. Now he and his lawyer are hoping that it will set a precedent for others who live in Akwesasne Mohawk territory. Here's Tom Fenario.
Right here we're in Gowinoga, as we call it, and over here is the Canadian portion of our territory. That place is the port of entry right here, right underneath that smokestack.
Like most Akwesasne Mohawks, Ganawagelo Jody Swamp knows the Cornwall, Ontario Customs Building all too well.
Everybody on this island, I bet you they must go through there at least twice a day, 3 times a day. You know, a lot of people are going to go get groceries and stuff like that.
In 2017, Swamp was pulled aside at Customs in Cornwall. Swamp was in possession of about $300 worth of firecrackers. He was charged with 3 violations of the Customs Act along with a single charge for transporting explosives, even though he was coming from the Ontario side of Akwesasne.
As soon as I saw this case and read the legislation, I thought doesn't make sense.
What upset Gordon is that the Canada Border Services Agency, or CBSA for short, didn't appear to be following its own rules. So the Mohawk Ojibwe lawyer set out to prove it.
Well, this is the brief that was filed on behalf of Mr. Jody Swamp in the criminal proceedings.
Gordon argued before an Ontario judge that in 2012 before the Senate, the CBSA said that travelers not suspected of coming from the U.S. would be released right away. This was in reference to Cornwall's unique position as the only Canadian port of entry that has both local and international traffic. That's because Akwesasne falls on the borders of Quebec, Ontario, and New York State. This means that travelers coming from the New York side must cross through Gowinoga, also known as Cornwall Island, in Akwesasne before reaching the Canadian port of entry. Even Akwesasne residents coming from the New York side who live on the island must still pass through customs in Cornwall before they can return to the island. Akwesasne Mohawks make up about 70% of traffic, and Gordon says they're being treated like criminals on their own unceded territory.
And I've been asking myself, why isn't it being challenged? Why is it being continuing? Why am I hearing people in this community talk about discrimination, arbitrariness, harassment?
Last week, Swamp's court challenge won. An Ontario judge ruled that because Swamp was traveling within Canada, he could not be searched without reasonable suspicion.
A weight was lifted off my shoulders, you know, having them come down on me for no reason. And having me going through the court system for so long, you know, it was just a big relief.
In an email to APTN News, the CBSA declined to be interviewed and said they are reviewing the court decision and will assess next steps. They have 30 days to appeal the decision. But for now, Gordon and Swamp savor a victory they hope will set a precedent. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Akwesasne, Mohawk Territory.
Dancing in the rain was part of Earth Day celebrations in Nova Scotia. Mi'kmaq grandmothers held a water ceremony followed by an unlikely dance group. Angel Moore brings us this story.
Doesn't fit in the bucket.
The Maritime Bhangra Dance Group joined Mi'kmaq grandmothers in celebration of Earth Day. The dancers are students from India, and Bhangra is an ancient dance of joy. Regardless of the pouring rain, about 30 supporters came and took part in dancing and a water ceremony.
We're celebrating, you know, the power of this river, the power of Mother Earth, and the love we have for the water, and the respect and the gratitude we have for clean water, to be able to drink the water. There's many places on Earth they can't do that.
The celebration was much needed for the grassroots grandmothers of the Stop Alton Gas movement. They are protecting the Sebenagani River from a natural gas company. It has taken them from the banks of this river to the courtroom.
The Bhangra group to come and to perform a water dance, really happy water dance, and really it lifted our spirits.
The grandmothers have occupied a camp at Alton Gas Company's worksite since 2017. Last week, the company tore it down after winning a court injunction to remove the water protectors from blocking the site.
The things that have been happening in the last little while at the treaty camp with the Stop Alton Gas movement has, it was a time of sadness for us.
They have relocated to the Treaty Truck House, which is on Crown land but still near the site. Alton Gas proposes to store gas in underground salt caverns, which means dumping the leftover brine into the river. The grandmothers fear the river will be damaged, and they are gaining support.
That's why my job as an Indigenous person is to be here on the ground, protecting it, researching it, putting forward evidence that shows why we must do what we do when we protect this water.
Ferrier says understanding how we connect to the land is critical.
The other systems are capitalist systems, and so understanding the sacredness of our relations is one way that biologists can contribute to protecting these lands and waters.
Bernard says the water is bringing people together.
The Bhangra dancers to come and want to be a part of this, and they're so happy, and their energy is so positive, and so much happiness.
Next month, the grassroots grandmothers are starting the Wabanaki Water Walk.
And we're going to be at the Treaty Truck House. That's where we're going to collect the water and start walking. It's going to take us probably 700 kilometers over 54 days.
They will join hundreds of people at a 4-day conference in Maine to discuss how to heal the wounds of Mother Earth. Angel Moore, APTN National News at the Sabanagati River.
We want to hear what you think. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptn news. You can also follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news. To Saskatchewan now, one town has declared a state of emergency because of out-of-control grass fires. Dry, hot conditions are the reason, and First Nations communities nearby are also being affected. People in the town of Biggar have been told to be ready to evacuate. The communities of Big Island Lake, Red Pheasant, and Mosquito First Nations have also been dealing with wildfires. Mosquito, about a half an hour from the town of Biggar, has been fighting grass fires for the past 3 days. Fire Chief Gerard Wahoban says that all the fires are currently out.
The current situation right now is no fires allowed. There's a ban going on. I assume, as what I heard this morning, the whole Saskatchewan there's a fire ban right now because of the fires, and there's not a big fire going on right now towards Biggar. I think it was around there somewhere, and it's just a fire ban right now. Just every year we have fires like this every year. In the fall too, I think we had a big fire a couple of years ago, and yeah, it's pretty tough. We're all local people helping around here.
While many Canadians celebrated Easter this past weekend, flood evacuees from Saskatchewan First Nation had little to be happy about and endured a wide range of other emotions. CTV's Drew McMillan reports this.
While Canadians across the country happily celebrated Easter, for many of the Saskatchewan people, spending the holiday away from home brought a range of other emotions.
Sad, disappointing, and hardly anybody to see in the Easter like this, where everybody should be all together.
Chief Friday says the worst may still be to come before a solution is reached.
But I don't know why we have to wait for a tragedy to happen in our community. Why not just go ahead and start planning and design the community, the road and everything, and start moving our stuff over?
In Cache, some flooding has started with sewage backing up in the nurses' station, and they expect more when the ice on the Albany River breaks up, likely next week.
Depending on what happens with the snow melt, the ice melt, the flow of the rivers, the levels, it's complicated the equation.
Which means there's still no timeline for when evacuees will be able to return to their community. Despite that, organizers are pleased with the process a week after the first planes arrived.
It's been going very well, all things considered. Understand these people are coming in from a very difficult situation. I've been working with them, as I said, for a week.
By Tuesday night, all 700 evacuees expected in Timmins will have landed and settled into the Ramada Inn and the Senator Hotel. Up the road in Kapuskasing, nearly 550 have arrived, along with over 200 in Thunder Bay. Authorities say they are arranging recreational activities like hockey games with help from the Timmins Native Friendship Center, and students from Saskatchewan are set to resume classes here in Timmins next week. Drew McMillan, CTV News, Timmins.
It's time for us to take a quick break, but when we come back, what's new in Indigenous wedding fashions? First, here's tomorrow's weather. On the East Coast, we've got 1 and cloud in St. John's, 12, and rain in Halifax. 1 and rain for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Kuujjuaq, -2 and sunshine. Chibougamau is rain and 3. Saguenay's rain and 3 as well. 15 for Sarnia, 16 and sunny in London or Windsor. Kapuskasing 10, Timmins 10, but 12 and sunshine in Sudbury. 13 and rain in Thompson and Norway House. 17 for Barons River and Princess Harbour and cloud. 19 and sunshine in Brandon. 14 and cloudy in Swift Current, but Yorkton, Regina, Saskatoon, all sunny and 15. 11 and cloud for Buffalo Narrows, 11 and sunshine for Uranium City. Welcome back. A Manitoba designer is gearing up for a special fashion show. It showcases both her culture and unique designs, all while giving back to the community. Edna Nabis is hosting the Aboriginal and Contemporary Wedding Showcase. She designed her first wedding dress a few years ago, and since then she's outfitted a number of brides. Her dresses are inspired by Indigenous culture and are made using leather and intricate details.
I like to use a lot of fringes. I don't just cut fringes, I cut lace, and then I tie all my fringes. And then we use beadwork, and not every dress is the same because it's a unique dress, so we make it for that person.
Her wedding showcase is next Saturday at the Garden City Canadians in Winnipeg. Doors open at 5 p.m. with entertainment throughout the evening. The fashion show starts at 8 p.m. Nabis says proceeds will go towards Shaughnessy Park School's walking school bus. Spring flooding is a risk for many, but non-Indigenous communities and municipalities usually get help quickly and can rebuild. If you live on a reserve, however, you may not get that same help, or it doesn't get to you quickly. Tomorrow on In Focus, we're going to talk about flooding on reserve, the lasting effects on some communities, and what's being done to help those who flood every year after year but can't relocate to higher ground.
Unreal what water can do.
Stress level is very high.
It's pretty bad, though. I think all the houses are going to be underwater.
We had to move out of the community just like that, with no notice, no warning, nothing.
It's a total disaster when you think about it.
It was called the Flood of 3 Centuries. Dozens of Manitoba communities and thousands of properties across the province were on the brink of disaster in the spring 2011. As water levels continued to rise, Premier Greg Selinger had to make a decision: intentionally flood some to spare others, or let Mother Nature decide who bears the brunt. That controlled break unleashed a torrent from Portage La Prairie into Lake Manitoba, the Fairford River, Lake St. Martin, the Dauphin River, and finally into Lake Winnipeg, an area known as the Interlake. Among the people fleeing the water's path, 3,000 residents from Penematang, Lake St. Martin, Little Saskatchewan, and Dauphin River First Nations.
Flood Fallout examined how little had been done for flood evacuees 2 years later, particularly for Little Saskatchewan and Lake St. Martin, 2 years after the government chose to flood them to spare Winnipeg. While farmers and rural townspeople quickly rebuilt, 3 levels of government twiddled their thumbs over what to do for 2 years. That's 2 years of evacuees living in hotels. 2 years of communities and families being separated. 2 years of people being lost on the streets of Winnipeg. Here's Little Saskatchewan today. The community has finally relocated. Roads are being built. Houses dot the stark landscape. Much different than the cozy community that used to be tucked in the bushes looking out onto the lake. The community isn't the same, and not all of those evacuees have been returned. 8 years later, and counting.
So that's what we're up for tomorrow for In Focus. Join me tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern to find out more. You can also join the conversation, of course, by phone and on social media. It's time for us to take another break, but I still have more news to come, so stay with us, and here's the rest of tomorrow's weather. To northern Alberta, we've got 8 and rain in Peace River, 9 sunshine in Grand Prairie, 9 and rain in Calgary, 15 and some rain in Medicine Hat, Tofino sunshine and 13, 14s and sunny for Victoria and Vancouver, 7 and rain in Smithers, 7 and sunny in Prince George. Beaver Creek is looking like some snow and 4 degrees, same with Dawson City and Mayo. -5 and snow in Norman Wells. Trout Lake is cloudy and 9. Sax Harbor is clear and -14. Paulituck -13 and clear. Colville Lake, some snow and -8. 17 and sunshine in Cambridge Bay. Chesterfield is snowing and -3. Repulse Bay is snowing and -12. Igloolik is in at -18, as is Clyde River. Clear skies up there. -20 for Arctic Bay. -11 and snow for Iqaluit. Welcome back. In the last 20 years, Nunavut has seen an influx of newcomers, and youth are more influenced by media and lifestyles beyond their territory. Do these external forces impact Inuit identity? Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs tells us as part of our Nunavut Perspective series in celebration of the territory's 20th birthday.
Nunavut have experienced drastic cultural change in the 21st century. Prefabricated homes, Western education, wireless internet, ATVs, and store-bought food are just a few modern moves. But what does it mean to be Inuk, or to even grow up in Nunavut for that matter?
Oh wait, you're from Nunavut, right? Yeah. So what about polar bears? And it's just like, I want to learn about photography. Can we not go through this 3 hours of backstory? Like,
Terry Kuzuak asks this question frequently.
Go ahead.
She's a performing artist, studying her craft down south, but spending a lot of time back in her home community of Rankin Inlet.
Birds, when you're at your weakest, that you figure out you're strong.
To ensure the continuation of innumerable aspects of oral traditions and beliefs, she sings.
But I got to find my own identity in traditional Inuit music. Yeah, and there are songs that are only remembered from listening to the person who wrote it sing it over and over and over again. You know, so songs are very personal in nature. It's not like just showing a clip instantly. It is sung by the person who wrote it, usually, or a close friend. And the meaning behind them is always understood. And so when you share the song with someone, you always share the meaning of the song and what it's about. So the song itself is what's kept premium. That's my older sister, my cousin Bunno, and my other sister Noti.
Kuzuak says Inuit experience is different with each generation.
Yeah, I think in my parents' day and age, something was either Inuk or not Inuk. You either were Inuk or you weren't Inuk. Even if you were Inuk, but you were the way you spoke and the way you acted and everything else was white, then they were white. But now Inuit is just a spectrum. You know, I exist on the Inuk spectrum, but I wouldn't say that I'm more Inuk than my sisters. My sisters, I would think, are more Inuk than me, even though we have the same parents. Because they speak Inuktitut, they're more interested in traditional things. They have more knowledge on those things. So I always adhere to, okay, they are more Inuk than me, but I am more Inuk than this person who grew up in Winnipeg. You know, so there people have that construct in their head of more or less Inuk.
Classic baby photo.
But sometimes it can be challenging to reconcile the transition and dual presence of modern and traditional culture. Youth who use English do so out of practicality, not because they are turning their backs on tradition. This crossroad has made Mumilak Kakak the center of attention when it comes to identity.
If I have somebody that speaks Inuktitut fluently with me, because I don't, I do everything I can to not be a part of that conversation. Because as soon as somebody realizes I don't speak Inuktitut, it's like, why do you have those tattoos then? Who are you to have them? And
Kakak grew up in the isolated community of Baker Lake and honors her ancestry.
Because the point of me having tattoos is realizing that these two sides need to come together to move forward, for me to effectively help, for me to feel like I can own an identity, that it doesn't need to be one side or the other.
Youth we interviewed say older generations of Inuit don't always share their story on colonization and trauma, and younger Inuit are left in the dark. This has an impact on youth identity.
Stories that you hear, and then you hear again as an adult, and you find out the stories are darker than you imagine because your parents are protecting you. And I have the benefit of having parents who are able to talk to me about these things. But there are other families where talking isn't within their value system. Not that they're better or worse, but it's just they don't talk about bad things, or they don't talk about things about before a certain time. There are people that by talking about it, you're dredging it. And by keeping silent, you're leaving it to peace. So there are certainly different ranges of education among Inuit my age.
Straddling the gap between old and new world. Youth are looking up to role models like Dr. Donna Kemilarczyk, the first Inuk heart surgeon.
She had not grown up with the Inuk family, but when she had gone through that course, all of us were the first to say, she's the Inuk doing her thing. Amazing. So now that pride coin has flipped on its head. Being Inuk is not this rare tag that you get with the E number on it. Being Inuk is now this identifier where you can be proud behind it.
Kuzagak retains and transforms her Inuk identity. Growing up only knowing Nunavut as its own territory, she is proud. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, reporting from Iqaluit and Rankin Inlet.
That's all the news I have for you this Tuesday. If you've missed anything this week, you can always visit aptnnews.ca. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for joining me. Have a great night, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.